Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Masochists Marathon. We are now on episode 6, I believe. I think that's correct, yeah. But yeah, so we start the episode off, like I mentioned last time, with getting in these buffer chests for the train outpost, the first iron outpost. Or should I say buffer crates, because we are using the wooden crates, because I don't really want to be using steel, and I'm never going to make iron chests. They're just kind of pointless. But yeah, we need to avoid using as much iron as we can. So we're going with wood. And to be honest, wood's kind of nice because they've got a smaller capacity, so they're going to fill up quicker. And when we get to stack inserters, which shouldn't be too far away, these will load up nice and quickly. And more of the chests are likely to be full. Because the first inserter in the line is going to take stuff off the belt, and it's not going to feed all 6 inserters from one yellow belt. So the fact that first one fills up quicker means they're all, going to be full quicker, if that makes any sense whatsoever. So we get that in place. To be honest, that's not going to make much of a difference to begin with until we start getting the stack inserter bonuses and, of course, stack inserters themselves, which aren't actually that far away. I've just finished this recording of an hour's gameplay, and I had a quick look, and stack inserters is something I should really go for very soon. So I didn't really think about it while doing the recording. It only came to me at the end, so we will get that sorted. We also place a chest there just to dump stuff we don't need, and at some point I'll shoot it at a later date, but we don't really need to worry about it right now. But yeah, we want to upgrade our armor, because this episode we're going to have a go at pushing to that large iron patch. I would feel much more comfortable with yet another iron patch under our belt, because we're going to be going through absurd amount of it, and if we don't have enough on us to push to a new patch, then yeah, we're going to get stuck. We're going to be screwed. We're not going to be able to have any iron to proceed, so we need a certain amount of iron to achieve more iron, if that makes any sense whatsoever. So just to pass the time, we researching gun turret damage. So just to pass the time, we're going to be chopping these trees down, because at some point I want to double up the science production for a couple of reasons, which we'll go into in a bit. And the new gun turret damage is complete, so that's all I wanted to do to try and have a push. We also have a look at some other research that we could be doing. We are encroaching the military science research fairly soon, so I pick bullet shooting speed, which is slightly less important than bullet damage. Bullet damage is very important because we're being more efficient with the resources we're throwing in the bite's face. Bullet shooting speed just means it throws into their face faster. So I have some more turrets on me, a load of ammunition. This is kind of just a test to see how we do, but we grab some fish as well and make sure they're on our quick bar just in case we do take a large amount of damage, because I do not want to die on this playthrough. And we have a go, and I realised we've already got spitters and medium biters, so I was going to try and avoid turret pushing, but then we have to try turret pushing, and even that isn't enough, because I don't know if you saw, we had a medium worm there, and we barely even scratched it. We shot it quite a bit, considering the fact this is at 3 times speed, and we barely even scratched it, so it's just going to be an absurd waste of ammo trying to deal with those with our current state. It's a bit worrying. I didn't really want to use piercing ammo for this, but I think it's the only way we're going to be able to proceed. I just don't know if we have enough iron to even achieve that kind of push. So this has made me very concerned. Pasby was very concerned once that had been done, because I was hoping we could at least push through to that patch. And thinking about it, I could have played this series very differently from the start. What I could have done was stick with the temporary base a lot longer, get green and red science going for all of the green and red that we could possibly do, for all military kind of stuff, and just solely focused on pushing to another patch. I could have used the temporary base just to make me absurd amounts of ammo, and I could have just turret pushed to there, and we would have produced a hell of a lot less pollution, and it would have been a lot less time for us to have tried it. So the evolution would have been a lot lower. I could have avoided the whole bus layout a lot longer and gone for that patch a lot earlier, and I don't know if that would have worked, and maybe we're going to be stuck. Maybe we're not going to be able to keep up with the evolution rate, and we're never going to be strong enough to push that patch, or at least not strong enough with the amount of iron we have available. So yeah, it's really coming down to earth, the game settings I've actually picked, and whether I'm going to be able to do this. So plan B, we're going to double up science just to speed this up a bit, for 2 reasons. One, because of the more expensive tech, we're just not getting it through fast enough as it is. And it's always nice to just use up resources even faster when you're on low richness. But also because the new sciences, so red Green and blue are still the same. They produce one science pack for their cycle. But military and the advanced ones, the yellow, purple, and I don't know what the deal is with the space tech, but they produce 2 science packs for their cycle. So the fact that we're going for 1 science pack per second, so 5 red, 6 green, means to match the 1 per second for military and so on, etc. We need to double up our red and green and blue when we eventually get to it. So that's why I wanted to double these up, but also because just the tech is stupidly expensive. Anyway, I don't know if our belt and inserter assemblers for this is going to be fast enough with the new ratios. I haven't bothered to do the math. It would probably take me 5 minutes, but I haven't bothered. We'll just see how it goes. I know the 1 cog assembler is still going to be fast enough for the red, so we don't have to worry about that. And we start clearing some ground for the military science. And to be honest, I didn't really need to clear these trees. The way I lay it out doesn't even come out this fast. But, you know, I was thinking a lot about the iron and tree therapy. Tree destruction therapy is a very nice thing. And also lab research speed is what we pick next, just to make sure we're using all those vials. Because speed is going to be a concern. And I guess lab research speed is more efficient than more labs, because you're going to produce more pollution with labs for more power you're using, more inserters. I don't know if there's any real merit in that, but yeah, that's my thinking behind it. So we get lab research speed on the go while we're laying out the military science, and we're kind of doing the military science backwards, because I want the assemblers for the military science to be nice and close to the labs, so we're not transferring it too far. We've not got too many buffered up on the belt. Again, that's not really ever going to make much of a difference, but we have our input belt laid out first, just so I know it's going to fit. We can deal with the inserter arms later on when we actually have some military science coming in. That's just to see if it'll all fit okay. Then we lay our input belts for the military science on the opposite side, so we can then start to lay that out, and we'll just pass those along as we need it, just so it ends up just making the bus longer rather than wider. I don't know, it just kind of looks nice like this. Same with the long-handed inserters. I've been placing them differently up until now, but I kind of like this layout. So I'm leaving gaps in between just so we have space for things like extra input belts of resources and beacons as well. We can shoehorn those in or just place them simply in the 3 space gap, but I like to space it out anyway. We did it in Bob's and we had a ridiculously long bus, but this bus is going to be a lot shorter, but you know, with a lot more space to just shove things in. So we have 10 military assemblers, which will create 2 science packs per second. So we'll need 1 piercing ammo, 1 grenade, and 1 turret per second. So piercing ammo takes 3 seconds, so we need 3 assemblers. It's a really nice ratio to go for. I quite like it because the math is so easy. And normal ammunition, that's something that's in the new 0.15 update that wasn't there before. You now need a normal firearm round for the piercing ammo round, making it more expensive overall, I believe. But yeah, we need 3 assemblers making piercing ammos. They take 3 seconds, and it's nice that a normal firearm takes 1 second, so we just need 1 assembler for that. So we get that all laid out. We are getting a very small trickle of iron coming through at the moment, so we do have a look at that next. I just decided to just get this whole area laid out, but because of the throughput of the train without stack inserters or any capacity upgrades, there is a bit of a slow trickle. But one thing I didn't really think about here is I put an output for normal firearms to begin with, which I don't notice for a little while. I even mess around with the power poles, powering it, clearly not paying very much attention there. But as you can see, there's a very small trickle of iron coming through. I come and have a quick look, and a train does finally come in, but we will need to speed that up so that the train can keep up with at least 4 inputs, 4 yellow inputs of iron. There's another, we need to add 1 more smelting column to be able to smelt 4 belts worth, but at the moment we're not even getting enough to run the ones we've got. So that is something we're going to have to look at some point. Another thing we're going to need is grenades. So we haven't got coal on the bus yet, and to be honest, the way I've laid this out, it doesn't really fit in as ideal as I'd like it to, but I kind of throw it in somewhere where it's not, well, it's hopefully not going to be a problem. And I want to make room for at least 3 belts of steel, even though it's going to take a hell of a lot of smelting to ever get 3 yellow belts worth of steel. So I just lay it out in such a way that it does leave room for that, but I don't think, well, we will get to that point eventually. It's just going to be a very, very long time away. So we continue laying out all of the products we need for military science. It takes us 8 seconds to create a grenade. So yeah, we need 8 assemblers creating grenades for the military science. Nice, easy ratios yet again. I come and look at where I can sort of save a bit of iron here and there. I did put in 2 belts worth of iron into the circuit production, which we will eventually use, but at the moment, as we're not using it, I just take it out so I can steal all of the iron off it. We don't want it just sitting there, so we come and lay out the 8 assemblers for grenades. One of the things I try to do in this design is not sideload where possible. To be honest, I'm just saying that I'm looking at the steel and copper inputs for the piercing rounds, but to be honest, because the amount of assemblers that they could run, it doesn't really matter. I think that could run 6 of them. So to be honest, I don't sideload there. I just like to try and avoid sideloading usually, especially in bobs and especially with these expensive recipes. So as grenades only have 2 input, I'll be able to fit those inputs on the opposite side using the long-handed inserters. But as coal is used more than iron, I want coal closer to the assembler because obviously a fast inserter can move a lot more than a long-handed inserter, so we want that closest. And I also hand the iron off for the grenades on the opposite side so that the underground belt for the coal will fit in and not get it away, hence the use of an extra underground belt there, and plus it looks nice and tidy doing it like that anyway. So we finally get lab research speed 2 done, which seemed like it took absolutely ages, even though we've doubled up our science, but partly the trickle of iron coming through isn't really helping that, and I kind of want a crafting speed upgrade. I know it's kind of a bit of a frivolous use of resources, but I'm only really going to do the one, so it's not going to make a huge difference. And avoiding using as much iron in the production line that I can, you know, it just, I guess it's going to compensate for itself, but that's a ridiculous statement really. But yeah, a lot of these are switched off, but I do switch on some production of electronic miners because we do need to massively increase the amount of mining we've got going down in the iron outpost to try and feed our continuous needs. But you can see on the right hand side there that most of the red science assemblers aren't running, and that's because of the lack of iron coming through. So it is a bit crazy setting up military science because it uses an absurd amount of iron, but it may just be the tipping point for us to be able to expose that 1.2 million patch that we have up in the northwest. So hopefully this is the right way to go about it, but looking at it in hindsight now, I wish I'd done this a lot differently, avoided the main bus method, gone with the outpost a little bit longer, done the red and green of all the things military we could have done, and just tried to push out there with before we got spitters or medium biters. But I don't know, maybe it would have been too slow at producing science. It's really hard to tell. If this all falls through and this series ends ridiculously early, in my spare time, if I do have enough of it, I might go and try and do it that way, or we could just go and try and start these settings straight away and do it differently. I don't really know, or just try and adjust the evolution settings a bit, or maybe just not do a death world for once, because my last series was a death world, and this is really more about the marathon side of things and the high expense. Maybe if I take the death world out, we could go for ×6 or even ×8 technology cost, but yeah, that does seem pretty mental. Anyway, we continue laying out the final ingredient for our military science, and probably the most iron hungry aspect of the military science, the turrets. They need 20 iron plates directly, then another 10 iron cogs, which works out at another 40 iron plates. So that's 60 iron plates per turret per 2 military science packs, which is pretty mental. So this is definitely going to be the greatest consumer of the new iron outpost, which is supposedly going to be the outpost that's going to achieve the 1.2 million patch. But I think if we can get to that 1.2 million patch, we can almost guarantee this series isn't going to end absurdly early. We are using medium poles for certain bits of those layouts because of the way I've decided to start laying out inserters. I just couldn't bear using the basic electric poles 2 next to each other, so I have used a few of them there. I'm sorry, my urge to have things looking neat and tidy is slightly greater than my urge to be as efficient as possible, but you know, oh well, let's just see what happens. So we extend the second iron belt on the main bus just to help feed this area so it's able to throughput all of the way, because red and green science will back up until military starts producing. Of course, once we get onto the military science, at the moment we're still just doing red and green science on gun turret damage 2, because that's going to be something we will help us pushing out to that patch. But we do need to push out to that patch as early as possible, which means as soon as I'm able to clear biter bases that are that close together, because the problem is I could take on one of those bases, I reckon, if it was completely situated on its own, maybe if I got a car. But the problem is, because it's a death world, there's just too many biter bases all crammed in next to each other. So I need to be able to eat into there, start widening it, and just be able to push the edge of the Red Sea. Once I can start to push it a bit, I can work my way to the patch and then clear an area round it and eventually secure it. Because the nice thing about vanilla biters are they seem a lot less aggressive than rampant AI. And rampant AI, if you try to build a small path through the biters and then clear an area, they're just going to attack everything because it's so close. But with vanilla, they seem a lot easier. So if I can at least tunnel into that ore patch and then clear an area, we should be able to start mining it. I noticed we were having power problems, so we've come over to check the steam. Initially, I thought it wasn't enough engines, so we brought 4 boilers and 8 engines with us. But it turned out to be just the classic old case of not enough coal coming through, then your power starts to deplete due to a lack of coal. Then you're not getting enough coal through due to the lack of power, and so on and so forth. So I added those in anyway, but we've added some more coal miners. But I think very soon I'm going to have to set up an outpost mining some coal just to certify no lack in coal, because that's going to be a difficult thing to do. You'd have to lay out a new coal outpost, then feed the power with wood to get it mining, take the coal in, and it's a little bit of a faff getting that in. So that's something I'm going to need to do soon rather than relying on this patch any longer. But we just make sure we have definitely got enough miners running. I also decided to start clearing the rest of the patch and amalgamating all of this mining into one. It is kind of nice having dedicated coal going to the power. And to be honest, thinking about this in hindsight, it's probably wasn't the best move. And I'm kind of making the coal going to power 50-50. But hindsight is a beautiful thing, and we don't always have it as a luxury. I don't know, I'm just rambling on now. But yeah, we get that done anyway. But all the mining is now on one belt. But I think I will set up the coal outpost next, and then have that whole patch just dedicated for power. And then we can bring the coal up to the power from down here, where the coal outpost will inevitably be. And that can also help feed the trains. And it means I can get on with laying how the depot will be with its waiting area and everything. So we set a bit of military science research going, thinking, oh, I wonder if that'll work. But we have not connected up the turret inputs to the military science. And we also haven't put the output arms for the military science itself. Plus, I don't like the way I've laid the inputs out for the military science. Even though it doesn't really make a difference, I want the inserter arm that's going to be working the most closest to the assembler, and then the long-handed arm can just take the turret inputs. We also haven't put in the output for the actual military science itself, so I need to collect some iron so I can produce those. We just use normal inserters because it takes 10 seconds to create one, so it's going to be a very long time until we actually need a fast inserter, probably around when we have beacons and everything. So we get that put in, so we do have some military science being produced. I also haven't done the input to the labs for the military science, so we also get that added in as well. And this belt will probably have blue science on it as well. I don't know how I'm going to bring that in. I do like the way Stejo has, in his playthrough, he's reserved a load of belts going back along the bus for the labs. I just don't like things traveling back along the bus that much, so I don't really know how I'm going to do it, but we'll deal with it when it comes to it. The last agenda for this episode is to expand the amount of mining down in the iron outpost. I also want to get this little patch here taken away because we're going to need all the iron we need. So I just lay this out pretty crudely because it's not going to last very long. But the most important thing is that all the power poles are very nice and straight. So we get that connected up to the nearest power line. I'm not amazingly fussed because, to be honest, as soon as this is all done, it's getting taken out. And we're just going to feed this down to the outpost because running a belt all the way back to the smelting just seems kind of crazy. This seems slightly closer. And we just get that inputting to the side of the belt because, again, it doesn't have to be massively prioritized. And the balancer will balance that nicely across all of the train inputs anyway. And the number of miners that we created from the construction area, I pretty much grabbed all of them. And we come and get all of those placed out until we run out, just trying to keep those equally across all the yellow belts. I don't think we've got enough to completely saturate one of these yellow belts yet, but it's nice to keep the whole area mining relatively equally. I think when we first discovered this patch, it was just over 800k. I checked. I don't know if it was at some point in the recording or afterwards, but it is down to 700 and something k. So I really need to keep a close eye on that, because that is our countdown for having to access a new iron patch. So we have all of those miners laid out. We just come and check to make sure none of the miners are being held up. We don't really want to move to red belt anytime soon. We want to leave it as late as possible. We also come and check how long it takes the train to get loaded up and if it can make it back before the buffer at the depot runs out. But I can't be asked waiting for it to be filled, because we're coming towards the end of the episode and there is a couple more things I want to do, but we just let that run and empty it out again. We have lost yet another miner here, but this area is going to take a little while to get rid of, just because of the fact we've just got normal miners, no bobs, upgraded ones. So I'll just have to keep as many miners as we can fit on the patch. One of the things I wanted to tidy up though was this bit here. I wanted to put a 6-to-4 belt balancer just to make sure we're using all of these equally, and I just didn't like the way it was hooked up, and plus it's always good fun using balancers, and I just wanted to see what the 6-to-4 was exactly like. I kind of get a bit confused because I've never really seen it before, and there was a half a splitter there not being used, which I found a little bit confusing. So I deleted the whole thing thinking I'd knocked out one of the ghost images because I didn't have enough underground belts on me. We go and place it again, but indeed that splitter is only half being used. But so long as it saturates those 4 belts, I'm not really too fussed. This just wasn't the best opportunity to test it because the depot wasn't fully outputting, which is something I'm probably going to sort out next episode, because we want those 4 belts continuously inputting, and we may add another smelting area if I fix that problem. But it just means adding more mining to the outpost and getting some stack inserters to the iron outpost 1 and definitely into the depot. So that's probably what I'm going to do first. Next episode is make sure that's running as best it can, and also get a coal outpost set up just so we don't have to worry about that too much. And while doing all of that, we can just do as much of the military research as we can to then make another attempt to pushing out to the iron in the northwest. So the last thing we do is just get a radar. It's the only side of the factory we can't see on the map, and it's just a good idea to have a nice 360-degree view all the time, just to make sure we don't get any attacks, or we do get attacks that we can deal with. But that's going to be all we have time for. I do hope you have enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching, and please do come and join me in the next episode. Bye-bye.